Welcome, welcome. We've made it halfway through the week. Good Wednesday evening, folks, and welcome to Hurricane Hub Live here on 13 News Now Plus. I'm Chief Meteorologist Tim Pandajis. Let's get right into it. Tonight on HHL, we're focused on Invest 93L. It is overall a very weak system, but already causing impacts along the U.S. Gulf Coast. We're going to get into that. Today is July the 16th, 2025. Today's Tropic Topics will Invest 93L, straddling the Florida Panhandle coastline. It is barely over the open waters of the northern Gulf. It needs to be over those warm waters to acquire enough energy to intensify and strengthen, although as of this time, minimal strengthening is now expected. In fact, in the verbiage from the National Hurricane Center with their most recent outlook about 30 minutes ago, they weren't even talking about it becoming a tropical storm anymore, so that means it wouldn't be getting a name. So unlikely to get the next name of Dexter. At most, this could be a tropical depression here in the next 24 hours, as it has a very small window to develop if it does stay over the open waters. It's also combating some shear that's coming in out of the east to northeast, and that's kind of offsetting all of the thunderstorm activity associated with it well away from the center of what now is Invest 93L. It's still bringing impacts, though. We need to talk about that. Squally downpours with flooding concerns, in particular southern Louisiana and southern Mississippi over the next 36 hours or so. Once again, Invest, this is just a tagline for, or a code almost, if you will, of a system that we're wanting to keep tabs on. So an Invest is short for investigative area, tropical wave to monitor for potential development. 93, just a record number, rotates through from 90 to 99. Once we get to 99, we go back to 90. And the L is a basin indicator. L means it's the Atlantic. If it was followed by an E, we'd be talking about an investigative area out in the eastern Pacific. All right, here's how it looks on satellite imagery. All right, going back over the last 12 hours, not a lot has really changed with this. Overall, the development odds have remained steady for the last 36 hours, holding at 40% odds in 48 hours, 40% odds within the next 7 days. Now, the center of this system here, pretty much due south of Pensacola, now over the open waters, the warm waters of the northern Gulf. Notice all the flare-up of convection here is a convective cluster that's almost offset from the center here, well to the west, already impacting portions out of Louisiana, eastern Louisiana, New Orleans area. Not really overall associated with the center of this storm system here. Starting to try to see a little bit of a flare-up here in the last couple of hours near the center. We'll see if that happens. If that does happen, that would lead to some modest intensification here in the next 12 hours or so. Overall, bigger picture here on satellite imagery. If we flip up things to the visible satellite and go back a couple of hours, look at this here. You can kind of see the low-level center almost splitting off and moving to the northwest, well inland in southern portions of Alabama now. So the thing to watch would be if a secondary low-level center tries to develop here underneath some of the blow-up of convection here that's farther west and southwest. If that can get going and then take advantage of some warm waters here out ahead of making landfall here in Louisiana, in southeastern Louisiana, we could see a brief burst in intensification, possibly getting it up to a tropical depression here in the shorter term. Turning on the radars out of Hammond, Louisiana, Mobile, Alabama, and Tallahassee in Florida, we get kind of a pretty comprehensive picture of radar imagery here. A lot of heavy rain, especially, again, well west, offset to the west from the storm center here. We got to keep saying center in air quotes here because it's not really an organized low-pressure system by any means. Lots of heavy rain building inland to the west, headed towards New Orleans, and those are going to be the areas that we're going to have to watch for the flooding potential in the next 24 to 36 hours, really through the remainder of the work week. So how are the models seeing things here? Well, it's been kind of a struggle because when you don't have a defined center of circulation, the models kind of try and guess where it is, which is why you see the initialization of all these different plots here on the spaghetti charts here. By the way, each line is a different model. Notice they're all different locations, north to south here. Some initialize it over land, some far to the south from where it's located officially from the National Hurricane Center, which is kind of in the middle of all these. So taking it from there, we'll take one that's closest to it and follow it. Pretty much takes it on a due west trajectory. Would keep it over water potentially for about 175, 200 miles off to the west, and then moving inland over New Orleans, and then taking a slow turn to the northwest here, and then moving north inland pretty much headed well north. And then possibly, I'm going to throw this out there, some of the longer range models, the Euro, for example, takes it north, out of picture here, north, and then moves east, and then kind of circles back around off the southeast coast of the U.S. So it may be something interesting to watch, even though after it makes landfall and it loses its headlines for the next couple of days, after Friday, say, by the weekend, we may see this turn north and then east. Maybe the remnant circulation of it hits the southeast coast of the U.S. and tries to redevelop. Wouldn't be the craziest thing we've seen happening in the tropics, but regardless of the short term here, looks like a due west track, and that's the movement it's currently on, west at 12 miles per hour. Earlier this afternoon, it was stationary, pretty much over Panama City, Florida, and is now over the open waters. Okay, here's how the modeling sees things. We're going to go shorter range, higher resolution model here. Notice how sheared it is. All the heaviest precipitation is to the west, southwest of that center, which would bring a lot of rain over southern Louisiana. Maybe some showers making it all the way to Houston. And then by Friday night, it begins to lift north, and all the squally activity begins to build inland into inland spots of Mississippi over to Alabama, and even getting up into Arkansas here later in the week. How much rain could we see? You know, models here show a pretty decent amount. Thibodeau, 6 to 9 inches of rain potentially here. 2 to 4 a little bit farther south. New Orleans putting out an inch or two, depending on where the heaviest squalls are. And it looks like there's going to be pretty consistent breaks in the squalls that come on through. So not having it all at once and very consistently is good, but still that's a lot of rain to handle, and that's why there was a flood watch up for all of southern Louisiana, even stretching over in Biloxi, Mississippi, and portions of just to the west of Mobile, Alabama, for the next couple of days through Friday evening. So that's something to watch there. So it will be bringing impacts, even though it's most likely not going to get a name. Elsewhere in the basin, we're starting to watch a little more activity. Nothing that's been outlooked yet, but it's certainly showing signs, the main development region I'm speaking of here, in the central Atlantic, southern Atlantic, that's starting to show some modest signs of maybe beginning to wake up. We're seeing more robust African easterly waves roll off the coast, seeding the Atlantic. We've got the warm waters there. Overall, the atmospheric conditions have been unfavorable so far. But we may be starting to see a little bit more overall lift, especially closer to the African continent there. We'll see if that starts to overspread farther to the west in the coming weeks. In the eastern Pacific, still crickets out here after a very active start to the season. Started on May the 15th. We got out 6 named storms, 3 hurricanes already in the eastern Pacific. Nothing looking likely here over the next 7 days. And that's favorable for additional development in the Atlantic, because usually when we get activity in the East Pac, that creates an excess of shear in the Caribbean and the Atlantic basin, detrimental to storm development here. So now that there's no activity in the East Pac, we may see the Atlantic begin to open for business. All right, let's get to today's tropical trivia. Let's see. Which hurricane holds the Atlantic record for the highest peak sustained wind speed? Was it Hurricane Gilbert, Allen, Irma, or was it Dorian back in 2019? I'll have the answer for you tomorrow on Hurricane Hub Live at 8 p.m. In the meantime, go ahead and scan the QR code to download the 13 News Now Hurricane Guide. It is information on supplies you should have on hand, emergency numbers you might need, and a whole lot more. And just a quick reminder, we're right here, same time, same place, Monday through Friday for Hurricane Hub Live. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 8.